Thank you so much for having us here. And I think we're going to start with a short PowerPoint presentation of what Preserve Alleppey Society is, because for most of you, you don't really know what it is and what it has been doing for the past 25 years. I'll hand that over to Rani, John.
So I would like to, I think Alleppey is very well known as the backwater, the head of the backwaters. But as the town itself, I don't think that is very well known. Every year there's a project that is selected. And at that time, another member, Kunyumeri John, was the president. I was the secretary. And we were thinking of what project we could do. So, I think serendipitously that we had both gone on walks. I had gone in Calcutta and Kunyumeri had gone in Singapore. And this idea came about, why not, we opened our eyes to what there is in Alleppey. A small town with beautifully preserved by default because there's no economic activity. And so that's when this idea took root. So the idea was that we will bring about an awareness of these beautiful buildings and of the history of the town. So we started walks, and that was also quite at that time, 20 years ago, in our small little conservative place, to have ladies acting as guides was quite a revolutionary idea. But most of our members chipped in. A few, of course, the families objected, but we started that, and along the way we learned that we have to have a good historical knowledge of the place. We're very fortunate to have a local historian, Kaleli Raghavan Pilla Sar, we call him, and he helped us a lot to put everything into perspective. Then we thought, before we start the walk, we should have a presentation, because to put the historical perspective. Otherwise, if you just walk, it's like it doesn't get the full impact. So we started that, and then we decided, we will use these walks as a fundraising mechanism. So it was a good way to interact with the local people. And so the next step, as the walks progressed, we were always disturbed by the garbage in our town. So, and these beautiful canals, which are the characteristics of the town, they were being used as garbage dumps. So we said, let's start on a selected street because our funds were limited. We started the first garbage collection in 2000. And we employed 2 ladies. We bought a trolley. We gave them uniforms. And we went house to house asking people to collect their dry waste. And we handed over the whole project to them. So it was like a livelihood for them. They could collect the service charge from the households. So it was a major project. And then we thought, we have no power to enforce any rules or fines for people who throw garbage on the street. So we went to the extent of even approaching the police to ask them if they would patrol the place and just ask, who is throwing this garbage. But of course they said it's a civil matter. They can't help us. So then the next step we thought is, okay, if there's a clean space, people might they might not throw their garbage into a clean spot. Thank you. Landscape. A portion of the canal, we cleaned it up, and of course then we ran into the bureaucracy. The inland waterways, canals were the inland waterways, the canal banks for social forestry, then there was a PWD. But anyway, we persisted, but because of this, we were not able to make the impact. We wanted to have a model street that would make an impact, and then we could progress onto other localities, involve the community. Of course, this garbage collection also, it was taken to a particular spot where it was supposed to be collected. But unfortunately, our municipality failed to do that. So the people in that area would get quite agitated that all the garbage of the street would come there. So I think our major failure was that we did not have the support we required. And also, it's a misogynistic society where women are treated, when you do something, it's not taken seriously. So that was also 2 main factors that we faced. So in 2007, we were really happy to see this huge project done by Mr. MLA, Mr. K.C. Venugopal, who did a fabulous project. So we thought, okay, now the government is taking over. Let's concentrate on other things. So we started a gallery in an old building, just to show the alternative use of these old buildings. Then we funded a Kudumasri project, making paper bags, and we distributed those bags to vegetable shops and things, so that less plastic came on the street. And this was going on, and what we, as we were progressing, we realized that change is coming very fast, that there is no there's of course absolutely no conservation rules in place, so people could tear down buildings, do anything they wanted. So things were changing so much, we thought we must document it before it changes, completely. So we started, taking the photos, and we tried to do it for 5 years, couldn't. Then we approached Theresa and the Thought Factory and her team, and they did an extensive. We had some basic, of course, the information, but they did an extensive research and interviewed a lot of people, and then finally our book was created. And so that we feel, after these 23 years, what do we have to show? Our town is changing beyond recognition. I feel a lot of the projects fall by the wayside. So, in a few years' time, what we really enjoy is that it's a small town with, we don't have high rises. We have, it's a beautiful place to live. We do appreciate what we have. But it's slowly changing, and I think the way it's going, within a few years, it'll become it's a characteristic little place, like the other towns that has happened to the other towns of Kerala. So this book is our answer to that. At least, in the future generations, if somebody, the communities that came, who are now slowly dispersing, it's a multicultural space, because people came to, because of the history of the town. People actually, it was built as a port, and it was built as a port. So many people from all over India were there. And those slowly started dispersing because there's no economic activity in Alleppey. Sorry. And so the book was our answer to, have some kind of, I think it's the only book of its kind in Alleppey. Of course, there's a lot of touristic, with a lot of pretty photos, but this is the, with the history, the background, and so I think we were very happy that we were able to do this with our, with the funds that we collected, and it's a legacy for us and for the future, the future in Alleppey. So, yeah, I think we have a few, we'll do a slide presentation of what we were doing. So this is when we started our walks. So we had this presentation about the history and the unique aspects of Alleppey. And so this really put the whole walk into perspective. So this would always be done at one of our homes. The next one. So this is the lunch that we used to have, and we used to have always, make sure that it was the local food and was highly appreciated by our guests. This is that the unique Gujarati quarter of Alleppey, and at the Gujarati settlers came at the invitation of the Diwan of Raja Keshavadas of that period. They were very important in the scheme of things because they're the traders, the businessmen of India. So they would the spice trade was in their hands. So they were given the best parts of the town to live. They, their religious institutions, as the Jain temple, the Hindu temples, then of course the Kachi Memons had their mosques. So this is, unfortunately, now most of them have left. We have very few Gujarati. So this is the old British factory, which has now become a cooperative society. And I think the Muziri's Heritage Society project has their office here. So what we included this slide was because you see three different architectural features. The Kerala roof, the colonial pillars, and the Gujarati door. And this factory is actually a working factory. So now hopefully it will become a museum space along with the working factory. And so the Koya has now become automatic and semi-automatic, but this factory still showcases the skill of the hands, and the legs have to be coordinated, the hands also. So this is the street where we first started the walks, and it's I think I've not seen this feature in most other towns except Port Cochin, where they have the shops below and the living quarters upstairs, like shop houses. And this was mostly because Alleppey was a planned town. This was where the Syrian Catholics community lived, and they were traders mostly by profession. And so they have the living quarters above, and the compounds at the back. So each house is of the same format, but designs are different, very unique. Unfortunately, a lot of them have changed. So this is the main temple of our town. This is the Durga Devi temple, and it's in the middle of our shopping area. It's quite distinctive that it is in the middle of this busy street and still functioning beautifully. So this is a person we used to see on our walks. She had this business going. And, she used to say that she used to keep all her stones outside but the rolling part was inside. So she said, nobody can shoplift. Only the stones can be taken. So unfortunately, the shop is closed because she's not well. She's bedridden now. This is when we first started our garbage collection in 2000. And you can see the two ladies at the trolley and our members there. So there's another picture, and I have to mention Shanimal Usman, who was the municipal chairperson at that time. She really helped us to get this going. And again, this is when we cleaned up the street. With our limited funds, of course, and planted. We did some landscaping, and we actually appointed a gardener also to see that it was kept well. As it is, unfortunately, we handed it back. We stopped doing this when the K.C. Venugopal did the huge project of the whole canal system. And this is the gallery that we started, and Mr. K.C. Venugopal, who had come to inaugurated it. And we had photos of the old town. And so this was in an old building on Gujarati Street. And in 2018, we won an award at the Responsible Tourism meet organized by the Outlook Traveller, and this was for our walk. So this is when we started in 2002. The pier was in this condition, and we had approached the authorities quite often to make it into either entertainment space, have some restaurants, do something. Or fell on deaf ears, and this is what it is today, which is, I don't know whether it can be salvaged at all. Unfortunately, that is unfortunately the picture of our times is when our assets are not recognized and left to go to ruin. This, I have to say, are all the ladies who contributed to keeping this, the walks afloat for 23 years. And we all contributed in different ways. There were people who would do the walks, people who would do the catering. Everyone would contribute in different ways according to their talents and ability. So these are all the ladies who took part and made the book possible. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rani Auntie, for this brief introduction about Preserve Alleppey Society. I think we are here today because it is a meeting point for a citizens' movement which started from the neighborhood, like just a group of women who lived in a particular neighborhood felt they had to do something about it. And we have Manoj sir here, who comes or represents the government angle to it, where Museris Heritage Project has identified Alleppey as a region of relevance because of its historical significance, and there have been projects underway which have been about renovation or conserving heritage buildings. I think this is a great space. Thank you for both of you coming here, because it is from two, like you're looking from the citizen's view to a larger perspective. When you started Preserve Alleppey Society, it was not with the intention of bringing out a document or bringing out a book about the history of Alleppey, but this is where it organically arrived at, whereas Manoj sir is coming from a policy and, you know, from a heritage point, represents the heritage wing of the government, where Alleppey automatically gets relevance because of its position, not just geographically, but also in history. I want to tell Manoj sir to just give an introduction of Muziris and its role in Alleppey.
So I'll just answer to that question first. Muziris project is basically an initiative by our former finance minister, Thomas Isaac. In fact, he is very passionate professional, if you look at him personally, who is very much interested in conserving our heritage throughout, not just in Alleppey, anywhere in Kerala. So if you look back, the worst thing that has happened to Kerala is that we don't have a documented evidence for many things in the past. We don't have the habit of documentation. So what has happened is we have lost many things beyond 6th century. So anything that is available in Kerala is all post 6th century. And Kerala is a tropical climate with very intense climatological, you know, what do you call, humidity, then severe rain, then severe sun. So what happens is, and our materials, like you can say, this was our old way of, you know, putting up roofs. And if you remember, we had, every year we had to change this. Similarly, even the mud plaster that we have, or even the laterite stone, all those things are vulnerable to the natural, this thing. So anything beyond 500 won't exist in Kerala, unless you have to go for a lot of, you know, intensive repairing that happens very, you know, regularly. But frankly speaking, our city, no, our town or our society or our state or even our nation was not capable of doing that. And you know that conservation is something which we are now speaking about. ഇന്ത്യയെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം കുറച്ച് അഡ്വാൻസ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. കാര്യം വെച്ചാൽ ഇപ്പോഴും ജീവിക്കാനുള്ള തത്രപ്പാടിലാണ് ഇന്ത്യൻ സമൂഹം. ഈ ജീവിക്കാനുള്ള തത്രപ്പാടിൽ കൺസർവേഷൻ അവർക്കൊരു പ്രശ്നമല്ല. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമ്മുടെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ചാലഞ്ച് കിടക്കുന്നത്. ഇത് അപ്പോൾ കൺസർവേഷൻ ആലോചിക്കുമ്പോൾ, കൺസർവേഷൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകുന്ന ആൾക്കാർക്ക് ഒന്നെങ്കിൽ അവർക്ക് സത്യം പറഞ്ഞാൽ ദേ ആർ ഓൾ വെൽ ഓഫ്, അല്ലാന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അവർക്ക് കൺസർവേഷനെ കുറിച്ച് ചിന്തിക്കാൻ സമയമുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ വീട്ടിൽ പോലും നമ്മുടെ ഗ്രാൻഡ് പാരൻസിൻ്റെയോ ഗ്രേറ്റ് പാരൻസിൻ്റെയോ അതിൻ്റെ അപ്പുറത്തുള്ള ഹിസ്റ്ററിയൊക്കെ തിരക്കി അവരുടെ ഫോട്ടോയൊക്കെ എടുത്ത് വെക്കുന്നത് എപ്പോഴാണ്? നമുക്ക് അതിനുള്ള സൗകര്യവും സന്ദർഭമൊക്കെ ഉള്ളപ്പോഴാണ്. അല്ലാതെ ഒരു സാധാരണക്കാരൻ്റെ വീട്ടിൽ പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു അപ്പൂപ്പൻ്റെ ഫോട്ടോ പോലും ആ വീട്ടിൽ കാണില്ല, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവരെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് അത് റെലവൻ്റ് അല്ല. അപ്പോൾ അതൊരു കൾച്ചറൽ പ്രശ്നമല്ല, ഞാൻ ഒരിക്കലും അത് കൾച്ചറൽ പ്രശ്നമായിട്ട് കാണില്ല. അത് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഫിനാൻഷ്യലാണ്. അപ്പോൾ വെൻ യു ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ദിസ് പ്രോജക്റ്റ്, മുസിരിസ് പ്രോജക്റ്റിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ഈ കേരളത്തിൻ്റെ ചരിത്രത്തെ റിവൈവ് ചെയ്ത് കൊണ്ടുവരാനുള്ള വലിയൊരു ശ്രമത്തിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമാണ് മുസിരിസ് പ്രോജക്റ്റ്. സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഗവൺമെൻറ് ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഇന്നത്തെ ബഡ്ജറ്റിലും കാണും, നാളെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വായിക്കാം. സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഇതിനെ കാണുന്നത് വളരെ സീരിയസ് ആയിട്ടാണ്. കാര്യം എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ കേരളത്തെ തേടിയുള്ള യാത്ര തുടങ്ങുന്നത് കേരളത്തിൻ്റെ സ്പൈസസിലാണ്. പലപ്പോഴും നമ്മുടെ ചരിത്രം പരിശോധിച്ചാൽ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അർബൻ പ്ലാനിങ്ങിൻ്റെ ചരിത്രത്തിൽ പലപ്പോഴും പലയിടത്തും എഴുതി വെച്ചേക്കുന്നത് കേരളത്തിന് ഒരു അർബൻ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഇല്ലെന്നാണ്. തെറ്റാണത്. കേരളത്തിന് അർബൻ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഉണ്ട്. നമുക്ക് വളരെ സ്പെസിഫിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ട്രേഡ് ടൗൺസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഈ ട്രേഡ് ടൗൺസിൽ 5 എണ്ണം നമുക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം. മുസിരിസ്, ടെൻഡിസ്, നെൽക്കിണ്ട എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ള പണ്ട് പെരിപ്ലസ് പ്ലിനിയുടെ സമയത്തുള്ള ആ ഒരു ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക് ഡോക്യുമെൻ്റാണ് ഫസ്റ്റ് എവിഡൻസ്. അത് ക്രിസ്തുവിന് മുമ്പുള്ള ചരിത്രമാണ് ഞാനീ പറയുന്നത്. ക്രിസ്തുവിന് മുമ്പേ ഉള്ള ആ ഒരു ചരിത്രത്തിൽ ഇതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് വ്യക്തമായിട്ട് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്, കേരളവുമായിട്ടുള്ള വാണിജ്യ ബന്ധത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്. ഈവൻ ഓഫിർ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ബൈബിളിൽ പരാമർശിക്കപ്പെടുന്ന സ്ഥലം കേരളത്തിലാണെന്നാണ് പറയപ്പെടുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അത്രയും ചരിത്രമുണ്ട്. ഈയിടെ നടന്ന തൂത്തക്കാമൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഈജിപ്ഷ്യൻ രാജാവിൻ്റെ മൂക്കിൽ അവർ കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചത് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ കുരുമുളകായിരുന്നു. അതെ, അപ്പോൾ ഈ തൂത്തക്കാമൻ്റെ മൂക്കിൽ കുരുമുളക് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നെങ്കിൽ ആ കുരുമുളക് പോയത് കേരളത്തിൽ നിന്നാണ്. അതിനകത്തൊരു സംശയം വേണ്ട. കാരണം വെച്ചാൽ കുരുമുളക് അന്ന് വേറെ എങ്ങുമില്ല. കുരുമുളക് കിളിക്കുന്ന സ്ഥലം വളരെ കുറച്ച് സ്ഥലം അത് കേരളത്തിൽ തന്നെയാണ്. കേരളത്തിലല്ലാതെ വേറെ എങ്ങും നല്ല രീതിയിൽ കുരുമുളക് ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. പലയിടത്തും അവർ ശ്രമിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. നമ്മുടെ ജിയോഗ്രഫിക്ക് പറ്റിയ സാധനമാണ് കുരുമുളക്. കുരുമുളക് കറുത്ത പൊന്നാണെന്ന് അറിയപ്പെടുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് അലക്സാണ്ട്രിയ വഴി ഈജിപ്തിൽ എത്തിയിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അന്ന് തൊട്ടേ നമുക്ക് 3000 വർഷങ്ങൾക്ക് മുമ്പേ വ്യാപാരം എന്തുണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളതാണ് നമ്മുടെ ആ ഒരു തെളിവാണ് നമുക്ക് കിട്ടുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത്രയും തെളിവുള്ള കേരളം, അങ്ങോളം ഇങ്ങോളം ട്രേഡ് ടൗൺസ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന കേരളത്തിൻ്റെ ചരിത്രം ഇതുവരെ നമ്മൾ ശരിക്കും എക്സ്പ്ലോർ ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല. ആ പ്രോജക്റ്റാണ് മുസിറി ഹെറിറ്റേജ് പ്രോജക്റ്റ്. അതിൻ്റെ ലാസ്റ്റ് കണ്ണിയാണ് ആലപ്പുഴ. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങ് വടക്ക് അഴീക്കൽ, ബേപ്പൂര്, പൊന്നാനി, കോഴിക്കോട്, കൊച്ചി, പിന്നെ നമ്മുടെ പഴയ പുറക്കാട്, കൊല്ലം, വിഴിഞ്ഞം, ഇതെല്ലാം നമ്മുടെ പഴയ പോർട്ട് ടൗൺസാണ്. 5 മേജർ റിവേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു കേരളത്തിൽ. ഈ 5 റിവേഴ്സും പടിഞ്ഞാറ് നമ്മുടെ കിഴക്ക് ഭാഗത്തു നിന്നുള്ള മലനിരകളിൽ നിന്നുള്ള സുഗന്ധവ്യഞ്ജനങ്ങൾ കളക്ട് ചെയ്ത് വെള്ളത്തിൽ കൂടെ, അതായത് പഴയ നാവിഗേഷൻ റൂട്ട്സാണത്, അതിൽ കൂടെ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് ഒരു 4 ലെവൽ ഓഫ് പ്രോസസ്സിങ് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് ഇത് ലോകത്തോട്ട് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരുന്നത്. അതായത് ആദ്യമേ ഇത് കളക്ഷൻ നടക്കും കാടുകളിൽ. ഈ കളക്ഷൻ നടക്കുന്നത് ഈ പറയുന്ന അപ്പർ ഹിൽസിൻ്റെ താഴ്വാരമെന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുന്ന, ഉദാഹരണത്തിന് അടിമാലി, കോഴഞ്ചേരി, റാന്നി, കോന്നി, ഈ സ്ഥലങ്ങളൊക്കെ അങ്ങനെയുള്ള സ്ഥലങ്ങളാണ്. അവിടെ ഇത് പ്രോസസ്സ് ചെയ്യും. ഫസ്റ്റ് പ്രോസസ്സിങ് നടക്കും. അതിനുശേഷം അത് ഉണക്കി ചാക്കി കെട്ടി നമ്മുടെ അടുത്ത സെറ്റ് ഓഫ്, അതായത് തുറമുഖത്തിന് മുമ്പായിട്ടുള്ള ചെറു തുറമുഖങ്ങളുണ്ട്. ഉദാഹരണത്തിന് കോട്ടയം, അതൊക്കെ താഴത്തങ്ങാടി, ഇതൊക്കെ അതേപോലത്തെ സ്ഥലങ്ങളാണ്. അവിടെ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് ഇത് വീണ്ടും റീഅറേഞ്ച് ചെയ്ത് ഒന്നും കൂടെ റിഫൈൻ ചെയ്ത് ചാക്ക് കെട്ടി വലിയ പോർട്ടിലോട്ട് വരും. ഈ വലിയ പോർട്ട് വന്നുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന ഈ 5 സ്ഥലങ്ങളാണ് ഞാൻ ഈ പറഞ്ഞത്. ഒന്ന് പെരിയാറിൻ്റെ മുഖം, കല്ലട റിവറിൻ്റെ മുഖം, പമ്പയാറിൻ്റെ മുഖം, പിന്നെയുള്ളത് ഭാരതപ്പുഴ. അപ്പോൾ വളരെ കൃത്യമായിട്ടും നമുക്കറിയാം ആ പോയിൻറ്റ്സ് എവിടെയാണെന്ന്. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു പോയിൻ്റാണ് ഈ ബക്ര എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആലപ്പുഴ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പുറക്കാട് തുറമുഖം. പിന്നീട് കൊച്ചിയുമായിട്ടുള്ള കോമ്പറ്റീഷനിലാണ് ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ പറയുന്ന ആലപ്പുഴ തുറമുഖം രാജാ കേശവദാസ് എസ്റ്റാബ്ലിഷ് ചെയ്ത് 1762 ആലപ്പുഴ പോർട്ടായിട്ട് വരുന്നത്. അതൊരു ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ കമ്പാരിറ്റീവ്ലി പുതിയ തുറമുഖമാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമുക്കിപ്പോഴും കുറച്ചെങ്കിലും ചരിത്രവുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട നേരത്തെ കാണിച്ച കെട്ടിടങ്ങളൊക്കെ കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് നമ്മളെ ഈ പറയുന്ന ട്രേഡ് ഹിസ്റ്ററിയുടെ കുറച്ച് അവശേഷിപ്പുകളാണ്. കുറച്ച് അവശേഷിപ്പുകളെ നമുക്കിപ്പോൾ ഉള്ളൂ. ഫോർട്ട് കൊച്ചിയിലുള്ള പോലെ, ആലപ്പുഴയിലുള്ള പോലെ കുറച്ച്, ബാക്കിയെല്ലാം നഷ്ടപ്പെട്ടു പോയി. അപ്പോൾ അതിനെ സംരക്ഷിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളത് എല്ലാ രീതിയിൽ നോക്കിയാലും, അത് urban പ്ലാനിങ്ങിൻ്റെ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആവട്ടെ, നമ്മുടെ ട്രേഡിൻ്റെ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആവട്ടെ, നമ്മുടെ കമേഴ്ഷ്യൽ ഇതിൻ്റെ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആവട്ടെ, നമ്മുടെ അല്ലാതെയുള്ള കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആവട്ടെ, കൾച്ചറൽ ഹിസ്റ്ററി ആവട്ടെ, അവിടെയൊക്കെ ഇതിന് വളരെയധികം പ്രാധാന്യമുണ്ട്. അതുകൊണ്ട് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഗവൺമെൻറ് ഇതിനെ സ്പൈസ് റൂട്ട് ഹെറിറ്റേജ് എന്നുള്ള പേരിൽ ബേപ്പൂർ, കോഴിക്കോട് തൊട്ട് പൊന്നാനി തൊട്ട് ഇങ്ങേ കൊല്ലം വരെയുള്ള എൻ്റയർ തീരപ്രദേശത്തെ ബന്ധിപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് വലിയൊരു പദ്ധതിയാണ് വിഭാവനം ചെയ്തേക്കുന്നത്. അതാണ് ഈ പ്രോജക്റ്റിൻ്റെ ഒരു സംക്ഷിപ്ത രൂപം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്.
I just want to add one important aspect actually. You were talking about the weather and the climate conditions being, making the buildings deteriorate or any historical monuments deteriorate. But we also have to remember that was probably the weather and the climate was probably one of the biggest reasons why the coast of Kerala became relevant. Even during the Muziris period, down to like now when we talk about Alleppey or any of the other ports, that the sailors, the traders had no choice but to dock in the western coast of India because of the southwest monsoons. They could not cross back to whether it was Arabia or any of the other ports that they were going to. So by default, the coast of Kerala became relevant way back. What he was saying was like Muziris is more than 3,000 years old. It's documented in Pliny's record, like he's made a map of it. And that same value is why even Alleppey, Kollam, the newer ports that came across in the Kerala coast automatically got trade. So I think one interesting thing for us to bring here is that I don't think when we started this project, yes, there were a group of people who are the Preserve Alleppey Society members, but I don't think beyond that group, people who lived in Alleppey knew the relevance of this particular town. And that, I would say, is not really a person can't change that, but history, the government, like that kind of awareness can be brought only on a much larger scale, which definitely Muziris Heritage Project is part of right now. But I think just knowing that it is an indigenous kingdom, it is an indigenous town planned from scratch, like it was completely built up by the Travancore kingdom, and there was a strategy attached to the port. There was, they needed revenue for defense. Yes, that's why it was competing with Cochin, the port as such. But these are such interesting snippets which make Alleppey as a town relevant. And I think when we had interviewed Manoj sir before, I think Muziris also sees it as a museum district, because this is one of the model towns of modern Kerala. It is actually the first planned town in modern Kerala. And I think Alleppey town today, because of what still exists, has the capability and the scope to become that museum district, which Muziris Heritage can hopefully make. Rani aunty, do you want to talk about some of the buildings that, through your walks, why did you start Heritage Walks? Could you just talk about that angle?
No, for us it was just the impact of a local person doing the walks that we experienced in Calcutta and in Singapore. And that whole perspective of going on a walk like that, and then we started looking at, the beauty of our old buildings also. We've been living there for many years but taking it for granted. But also that, was, and we were thought, before it changes, we should bring an awareness. We don't have the funds to do any restoration or anything, but at least bring an awareness among our local people and the people who come to visit, that these are, very unique in the sense that it's unchanged for the last 200 years since it was built. Unfortunately, before we could get any, of course, there's no conservation rules in place, I think, anywhere. So buildings are coming down, concrete buildings are coming up, and there's no controls on all this. So, yes, I think it was in 1990 that architect Laurie Baker had done a beautiful project for Alleppey. He had said, how the towns in Europe, they conserve the town centers, and it draws in so many visitors, and that whole economic the impact that it has on the town, and especially for Alleppey, because it was in decline. It is, the people were leaving. Young people are still going away because of lack of business opportunities. So this would have brought in a huge impact, other than, more than any other town, if we could have got, what Laurie Baker suggested, the conservation, and it's, as you said, it was not, it's, of course, when you think of conservations, maybe when you're not, have to earn your bread and butter, but it would have impacted those people very much. The little cafes, the taxi drivers, the hotels, the auto rickshaws, all of them would have got some, and the employment opportunities that would have created would have, really gone a long way to help in conserving and, uplifting our town.
See, in fact, as I told you, conservation of building is not very easy. It's a pretty hectic and very time-consuming and also money-consuming thing. So what I seriously feel is, I told you, from Muziris' point of view, government has pumped in more than 150, 200 CR, into this particular conservation project. It extends in 3 districts, like Ernakulam, Thrissur, and Alleppey. So the whole concept is living museum. So living museum means it's a very novel concept, and it's participatory model, because there are 2 ways of conserving, like what Archaeological Survey of India does. they take up the project and they seal it off. Once it becomes an ASA property, it is their property, nobody can do anything. But if you look at Kerala, we can't do that. Basically because many of our history, heritage is part of our living system. Like for example, take Cheraman Masjid, or maybe the Makkah Masjid in Alleppey, or maybe the Saukar Masjid. All those things are still active. Namaz is happening there. So in such places, even though it is historic, even though it's having a long history, we can't conserve it as ASI does. So the concept of conserving this, and obviously what happens is that I still remember a relevant question asked by the community members here in East Fort. When we were trying to preserve and conserve the East Fort area, we do have guidelines, set guidelines, what to do and what not to do. But people do the way they want. So the problem is, the very loaded question they ask you, as you know, from the people's side is that, are you going to freeze us? Which time? Because those people who are living in Agraharam, you know that what Agraharam is. It's directly street abutting buildings, and they do have very small, they call it tinna, and they don't have a place to park their scooter. Their cars cannot enter inside because it's all small street. So they do have aspirations. They think they want to buy car, they want to buy a scooter, where will we place it? And they want to live in AC rooms. And how can you say that we should live in 6 feet by 4 feet space within that system? So these are all real issues, So what happens there is, that is where we have to really think. Unless tourism becomes a part of, tourism should be used as a tool here. We, as such a person who is working with the industry and meeting people and getting into various conversations, what I gain now is, though Kerala is having 10% stake in the industry stake in the tourism, but we have never considered it as a source of income. Kerala still feel that tourism is something it's like, it's not our this thing, it's somebody is doing it, it's okay. That's the stage where we are in. We have never considered tourism as a resource, tourism as a tool where we can make money. But we do have good examples, like what is happening in Fort Cochin, what is happening in Alleppey in some places. People are converting their houses into homestays, people are converting their houses into cafeteria, people are converting their houses into small, places where they can sell pictures or gallery or whatever it is. So that transformation is very, very important. People should start considering that the heritage property is an asset, and we should be able to make money out of that, and the government or the system should help them. People should help them. So unless that change happens within ourselves, where money can be generated from heritage, heritage will always remain a problem for people. And the best example is in Kollam. If you find heritage anywhere, they will suddenly remove it from that place, because they think that heritage is a burden for them. I have seen that happening. So in many old towns, that's a problem. So in Alleppey also, the best thing about Alleppey is that, if you consider, there is something called a concept called tourism district. The concept district is not Jilla as we see in administrative side. District means, like for example, Lake District. You might have heard about Lake District in England. So district means a place which is having certain strong visual elements or elements that correlate with the particular place. Such places are called districts. So if you look at tourism districts in Kerala, Alleppey is number one in that. That's what I was mentioning you. Because Alleppey is having all the ingredients. I mean, when you say ingredients, that means that all the natural and the cultural assets. Then the scale of the city is very important. I'll tell you one good example, how we have spoiled things. Like for example, I never understood that till when I went to England. I went to Oxford Street, I was walking through the Oxford means it's a university, this thing. See this Trivandrum city, starting from the Secretariat building, then you have got the LMS church, you have got the English church, you have got the, the open space. The police stadium was not covered like this, it was an open space. You have got the university building on the other side, you have got the Tagore Theatre, then you have got, not the Tagore Theatre, what is that, town hall, Victoria Town Hall. Then you have got the University College, Sanskrit College, the public library building, and including Kanakakunnu Palace. And you note, none of these had this high profile walls. We call it Madilugal. It was not there. all those were transparent. And they very clearly they put this, what do you call it, grill work, that cast iron grills, so that you could see. So the entire area was designed in such a way that that publicness, that openness, and the landscape was well preserved. It was a beautiful place. But the see way we have converted it now. We have put up, different types of walls. We have put up different type of buildings. So the essence of the space is lost. So it is that essence that is very, very important for a tourist district. Luckily, Alleppey do have it. Basically because of what we call it lack of development since last 100 years. But that lack of development of that last 100 years have helped Alleppey in preserving some of its, but at least if we can understand that now, I think town planning department, town planning department has come out with this thing. But I think the initiative that is being taken by this particular, society, it's very, very crucial. Because this knowledge which, or maybe the knowledge or maybe the passion or whatever it is which you are imparting to the society will bring in a lot of change, like, it's kind of a feel that I have to preserve my old building. But at the same time, we should also teach them how to make money out of that. So once you combine these two things together, your project will be a successful this thing. And somehow we have to bring it. And government is trying for that. We are coming up with two large projects. One is we are going to have, I forgot the exact name of the project, which we have submitted to central government. I think central government is going to consider it. So it's a large project where we are trying to consider Alleppey as a region with relation to water. So Alleppey is having everything. It's having a very beautiful beach. It's having beautiful heritage town. It's having beautiful canal system. It's having a beautiful lake on the other side, and all that cozy scale. So I think the initiative, I think it should continue. It should continue to the next level. As ma'am was telling, this lesson should primarily go to schools. I think the initiative should now focus on the schools where the kids should be taught like this is ownership should be there. Every kid in Alleppey town should say that Alleppey town belongs to me. Once that belongingness comes in, what happens is that that passion slowly, we try to clean up the canal system. Around 32 institutions in the sense establishments are directly pumping sewer lines into the canals. And we have stopped it. But how long? So the attitude to throw waste into the water, the attitude to open up sewer into the canal, all those things are basically, social problems. So I think we have to have a hand-in-hand approach to maybe legal enforcement is also needed. Town planning regulations are required, and also social, acceptance and social, ownership of the particular place. All those things should come together. So I always believe that it's a joint effort. It's not one single party there. There are different stakeholders. I personally feel that, ma'am, your institutions can do a lot in this, because you can be an umbrella organization which can bring in all these stakeholders together. It's not a very easy task. I think possibly we have to have the next generation to be part of you, and you should consider that also in your this thing to take this forward.
I think we have a few members of Preserve Alleppey Society here, and they are all ready to retire and hand over to the new generation. But yes, I think I also quite agree that it's a holistic approach. It cannot just be from one organization or even like top down from the government down. Everyone has to be participating in it. And I just want to also announce that the reason why we are here is because Preserve Alleppey Society has, when Rani Aunty is talking about their legacy, is that they have brought out the first historical document about Alleppey town, which is called the Alleppey Story. And I was fortunate to be part of the research team and the design team. And I just wanted to leave this conversation at that note. Now we are going to open the stage to the audience for any questions or something you want to ask them or anything.
What were the reasons that Travancore created Alleppey, connected to spice, strategy of the historical context in which it was developed?
Yeah.
I think Cochin was controlled by the Dutch and things like that.
Yes.
And the main characters who were behind creating Alleppey, I'm not talking about the king, I'm talking about the people who operated in Alleppey, who created that town. A few words, please.
There are two sides of this. I'm not going to deep into that because it's quite a serious thing that you have asked me. But one aspect is this Cochin. Every city, once it gets saturated, what happens is that like for example, that Cochin was a seriously what do you call a melting pot of so many things. You had several stakeholders in Cochin port who were doing business. And there was a lack of space within that system. There was a lack of what do you call this support within the system, where some of these traders wanted to come out of that and establish new. So that was one subtle thing which was behind this whole idea of creating a new port. Other than that, obviously, when Cochin became very prominent, it's a source of income. As I told you, the source of income for Kerala's rulers were basically trade, nothing else. And we had this traditional ports in Kerala, which was Kollam was the port of Travancore, in fact. And Kollam went into this thing, especially after the Dutch victory in 1640s. So by 1640, they spoiled Kollam. In fact, they fired Kollam for almost like around 13, 14, 16 days. And they spoiled the whole of this thing, establishment. And later, the Dutch were defeated by Martandavarma at Kolachal. And they wanted to build a new port, where they found Alleppey was the most suitable place, because as I told you, the entire thing that we traded came from the eastern region, and it was through this Kottayam side, which Tarathangadi, and then came down to Punnamada down south, down west. That area was the potential area where they could put up this go downs and all those things. And Alleppey was predominantly a vacant area at that time, because if you look at the coastal region starting from Tangasheri to Thrissur, Tangasheri Kollam to Thrissur, this entire area, if you look at the coastal region, it was all marshy and it was full of this water inlets. So if you look at the prehistoric period, the coastal towns were basically the midland towns, and the entire area was reclaimed. ഈ പൊക്കാളിപ്പാടം എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്ന സാധനം, ഇറ്റ് വാസ് എ ന്യൂ കോൺസെപ്റ്റ് ഇനിഷ്യേറ്റഡ് ലേറ്റർ. ഇത് നികത്തിയെടുത്തതാണ്. ഈ മെത്രാങ്കായലൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവുമല്ലോ, അതൊക്കെ നികത്തിയെടുത്ത കായലാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ കൃഷിയൊക്കെ തുടങ്ങുന്ന പിന്നീടാണ്. ആ ഒരു റീക്ലമേഷൻ പ്രോസസ്സിൻ്റെ ഒക്കെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് നമുക്ക് ധാരാളം ലാൻഡ് ആ ഭാഗത്ത് അവൈലബിളും ആയിരുന്നു. പിന്നെ ഈ ഓൾഡ് പോർട്ട് ടൗൺ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ബക്രെ, അതായത് നമ്മുടെ പുറക്കാടിന് അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ലൊക്കേഷണൽ അഡ്വാൻറ്റേജ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നെങ്കിലും നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ സിൽറ്റിംഗ് എല്ലാം കാരണം ആ പോർട്ട് ഇല്ലാതായിപ്പോയി. അപ്പോൾ Alleppey became the right location for them to operate a new port. That was the reason. And they invited all these Kachi, Memans, then similarly Gujarati settlements came in, Tamil settlements, Konkani settlements, everybody came in and they got settled there. And it flourished to be a port.
I have read that Egyptian, during the Pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut, during her time, ships were sent to a place called Tasiris, and there is a question mark. It's a mystery where it is, but it is now it appears can be Musiris, and ivory and peacocks were taken from the
Yes.
Egypt.
Yes.
Secondly, if this is part of Kodungallur region, why it is not been revived back? Because it is a natural port for ancient time, can be revived back now.
Maritime trade has changed a lot, and the answer to Kodungallur is Cochin. So Cochin is the new port instead of Kodungallur, basically because of the shift in the Periyar river, and later the well-defined designed port developed by the British later. So Cochin became an established port just because of that. And the advantage of this thing is Periyar is the river which is bringing maximum water into the sea. That means it's like the quantity of water is pretty high. So that inflow is pretty good. And obviously it is deep also. So that's the reason why that area was established as a port. But if you look at history, the first Chera Empire, I think, see, all those historical positions do have questions associated with that. As I told you, we never had a history of documentation, proper documentation. That's a major problem. But anyway, it is said that in 825 AD, the first Chera Empire was shifted and the second Chera Empire was established in Kollam. That's how it says. So Cochin port was established in 13th century, in fact. And it became prominent in 15th century. And it is continuing. It's already doing it. But there are limitations for developing ports. It's a very technical subject. But still I should say that Cochin port is having limitation. Because Cochin port is very much dependent on dredging. Dredging is a very costly affair. That is why Vignettes do have a better potential. Because Vignettes, we don't need dredging. And very deep also. So obviously, this can handle better compared to the Cochin port. And Sagarmala is such a project. Central government is coming up with lots of interesting, developments with respect to the maritime trade. And maritime trade was always a strength of India, and it will remain like that. And those who have a control over the maritime trade will have a say in the world economy. There's no doubt for that.